For real. 1013 got the city on lock. And when you're out of the city, listen online at 101jamz.com.
IMHO 101 Jams. In my humble opinion, Sir Charles
Maxilia Robinson.
This is 101 Jams, number one for classics in today's hip-hop and R&B.
Mm-hmm.
And
home of Cheryl Underwood Radio, and of course, Monday through Friday, 6 to 10 a.m., the Rise and Grind Morning Show.
That's right. What up, Kitty? What up, E? What up, Tank? So, we're back, and like we promised you, we have some, as always, we like to educate, to activate our community,
Mm-hmm.
and we have someone that's been on here with us before, so she's family, and we have Miss Peggy Scott. She is an RN for accrual and outreach specialist with the Cancer Center at UVA in the clinical research office. And Miss Peggy Scott, can you hear us loud and clear?
Yes, I can. Thank you.
All right. Now I'm going to ask you, Miss Peggy, to get a little closer to the microphone for us so the people...
I certainly will.
There you go.
Thanks.
So people can hear that lovely voice loud and clear.
Thank you.
And so, Miss Peggy, you were on before in regards to the community down in Southern Albemarle, down in Esmont. And so people know that you do great work in the community. And I'm sure people, they don't know the name. When they see the face roaming the UVA halls, they will recognize you. So let the people know what brought you in today, though, on the information you have.
Well, today I'm here, Charles, because I have been working with the University of Virginia for about 28 years. And now I'm in the Office of Clinical Research. I was there previously back in 2009. One of the issues that I noted was very prevalent was minorities and research. I noted that I could accrue patients to long trials, and the majority of those patients were coming from areas that were underserved and also poverty-stricken sometimes. And most of those patients were not patients that looked like me. So I concerned myself with minorities and the lack thereof regarding clinical research. I found that even though you could share the information, people had a lot of mistrust. There's a lot of myths around clinical research. So I really wanted to come today to sort of debunk some of those myths and share with the audience that clinical research is for everyone. It helps everyone. And even if it doesn't help me or the individual at that time, in the future, this may be the therapy that saves a loved one's life.
Now, Miss Scott, and I'm sorry, you don't mind if I call you Miss Scott, Miss Peggy. It doesn't matter, right?
Fine. Yes.
So, Miss Scott, before you give us the actual definition or the meaning of clinical research, let's be honest, and we know us as African Americans, we've been through a lot, between the different atrocities and trials and experiments that have been done on us since slavery. And then you think about, like the Tuskegee experiments, and the list goes on and on and on.
Henrietta Lacks.
Right. So so I'm not gonna be naive and think that we don't have listeners that hear clinical trials from a corporation, and don't think, hey, this may be something that is not actually going to help me. And especially, with the racial climate that we're in right now.
Absolutely.
So please break down to our listeners what clinical research is and why you feel it's safe and a good idea.
I'm really glad you brought up those points, Charles. They're very relevant. Those points of the Tuskegee research as well as the Henrietta Lacks research, African Americans have a tendency to mistrust healthcare anyway. And when we think back on those issues that arose when it came to those airmen and Henrietta Lacks, we have to say that it was an atrocity, not unlike the atrocity of slavery, not unlike the atrocity of racism. However, since those times, there's been so much put in place to protect any candidate that decides they want to participate in a clinical trial. There's internal review boards. There's external monitoring. There is a FDA, a federal government has monitoring going on. So a lot has come about because of those types of research. Those candidates were unfortunate, but I must say today there are too many regulations to say that there will be a rogue provider that will go out and do things on his own. And if he does, there is consequences for that. So things have changed dramatically since the times of the Tuskegee Airmen.
Hello, Ms. Scott.
Yes.
How you doing? I have a question for you. This is Ray.
Hi, sir. Yes, please.
I hear you, and I'm one of those people that Charles is talking about. That
wonderful.
aren't quick to believe that the powers that be are not still in control. So I understand that there's regulations and stuff put in place, but in my soul, I think that, and this is Razor's views, that the people that are in control of everything still are looking towards the almighty dollar. And if they have to administer it to people who think that they're getting a free dollar because they're coming along, you'll give me $100 if I let you do these 6 weeks experiments, or people that I can't afford health care, so I'm gonna run and try this new experiment that maybe it'll help my situation so I don't have to actually go get insurance. I still believe that the powers that be still will take advantage of that in the masses.
That is an excellent scenario and an excellent question. And I want to share with you that the powers to be are not in charge of how a protocol is implemented. Once the studies have been done preclinically, prior to animal testing, there are regulations. During animal testing, there's regulation. Before it gets to humans, there's all kinds of testing that has been done, but it's all been regulated. Now, by the time it gets to a human being, we have all guards out. As I said, you have the IRB. You have a nurse and a doctor who's working with you on this clinical trial. The nice thing that I want to share is that in the days of guinea pigs don't consent. Guinea pigs can't say, I want to stop this trial at any point in time. Human beings have that right, and they get the opportunity to do that. If you choose that you do not want to continue on a trial once you're on it, you get to say no. There is no provider or no powers to be that can hold you on to that trial. If you choose not to participate, there is no one who can say you have to consent. So I want to assure you that, as it may have been in the past, is no longer the case. I've been in this research arena 2009 to through 2012. I'm now in this research arena again. If I ever thought that this was the case, I would bring it forward. But I have to tell you, the protocol is protected by so many entities that even the slightest deviation has to be reported and brought forth. And the federal government will not allow for someone to be on a protocol if their safety is at risk.
And I'm sure it goes through some people's minds about whether or not will you fix A, but give me B, C, D, E. You know how you see those prescriptions on that come on TV, and tell you what it'll help, but then it'll tear up everything else. And
I'm gonna fix your heartburn, but you might have gas with an oily discharge.
So what should people expect then if they decide to participate in a clinical trial?
So that's a great question as well. What I want to share is that clinical research is not proven therapy. So let's go here. If you take an aspirin, it's been through multiple trials. There are side effects. You can expect side effects, and you should expect side effects. But the outcome, hopefully, is to your advantage. Clinical research may or may not help your situation particularly, but it may help someone that you love in the future. There is not a medication on the market that has not been through clinical research. So you would not be able to take an ibuprofen had it not been from someone prior to us that was willing to participate in a clinical trial. And clinical trials involve devices, it involves medications and drugs, but it involves multiple things that we use on a day-to-day basis. So when I say clinical research the value of clinical research helps all of us, I can't express enough how minorities are missing out on some of that because we are not necessarily receiving the cutting-edge therapies that are already in play for clinical research.
Now, so Ms. Scott, some of the myths and things that, and the legends, so to speak, of not only clinical trials but cancer treatment in general. I know you wanted to touch on that. So can you elaborate on that a little bit, on some things we should know?
So people believe that there are people who still believe, as you guys just brought forward, that if you go into a clinical trial, you'll not get the best therapy, that the powers to be will use you as a guinea pig. That trust is vitally important between you and your doctor, and you do have to have that relationship. So when someone offers you a clinical trial, you have the right to ask so many questions. And there are people in the healthcare arena who will sit with you and answer those questions. Clinical trials are monitored more than the average healthcare because it's already in play as standard care. But I do want people to know that there'll never be a time they won't get the best care, because that's not allowed, and that the therapy that they'll receive is substandard. That's also not allowed. So to believe that the myth of they'll give me substandard medications or treatments, it can't happen anymore. And there are rules, there are regulations, and there are laws. And I think that anybody in the arena that's giving care would also call out if they observe that occurring. So I don't think people are as quiet as they used to be either.
Now, and this question actually came through from a listener. As far as you mentioned the animal trials.
Yes.
Now, there are more animal rights activists today.
Yes.
And people, PETA and what have you.
Yes.
Than there used to be in the past.
Yes.
So, are there any other ways that testing is done, and I know animals are still the primary safe way before it gets to humans, but are there any other variances?
Yes, and what I would say to that is animals are the primary source, and they try to use mammals, which are most like human beings, and so it can create some stir when we know that mouse trials are going on for a certain therapy or drug. However, the outcomes and the benefits of those trials for animals, and like I said, mouse happen to be the one that I know is most prevalent. The benefit to human beings is so great that there is a cost, and the cost is the loss of an animal's life. But we also have to think about, to be able to continue life, we have to do certain things. And I'm not into the arena where I can answer that question to the PETA people, but I would like to say that research is necessary. It's a necessary evil. And that we have to think about human life as well.
So if a client has an adverse effect to your treatment, do you stay on board once the study is done to make sure that they resume some type of normal health? You know what I mean?
Excellent question. Yes. After clinical research, there's a follow-up period. And that period can extend into years. Because that person was on clinical trials, it may be 6 months, it may be a year, it could be 3 to 5 years, it just depends. But they are in follow-up for a standard amount of time just to see what the outcomes were of them being on that trial.
Now, and this may be a little off center too far, but vaccinations. If you have any expertise on that, because a lot of people also question that on saying, what research was actually done? Is this actually safe for my child? And things like that. Do you know about the research done for vaccinations?
I can't say that I know exactly about research on vaccination, so I'm not an expert in that arena. However, I have to say that a vaccine cannot be used unless there was research completed on it. And the issue that arises oftentimes with individuals with research is they have the fear of it, and they therefore cut off the service or the health care based on that fear. In the meantime, we have a population of people that when we have communicable diseases such as chickenpox and other STDs and so forth, if we don't have vaccines to help us protect the population at large, then I think we suffer and we fail. So I have to say that as much as I support that there are families who choose not to vaccinate, research has been done, and it was done on the same basis as research is with every medication, treatment, and device that you receive throughout.
And Peggy, to bring it home, we're going to take a quick break, and we'll be right back to you because that's such a pressing issue, especially with our young black boys and how they get medicated so heavily nowadays, and they get identified as special ed or being told that they're too hyper. And some people like to say that the rise in autism comes from vaccinations. So of course that's a fair question.
It's a very fair question. Thank you.
Yeah. But before we go to break, real quick, just let the people know your website here if they want to learn more about clinical trials or to see if there's something that they may want to take part in.
Absolutely, I would love if everyone would take the opportunity, whether they need a clinical trial or not, to go to our website, and it's http://uvahealth.com/clinical-trials-trials. Go there, whether it be for you or for someone else, and we'll happily repeat this again. Thank you.
All right. So, Max, what do you say we take a quick break, and we'll be right back with Miss Peggy Scott to wrap up our discussion on our clinical trials. And, we're actually going to bring her in on the healthcare debate that's going on right now. What you think about that, Max?
Sounds good.
All right,
Sounds good.
So, Razor's going to take us to break. We'll be right back with Peggy Scott. She's RN and accrual and outreach specialist with the Cancer Clinical Research Office at UVA. IMHO 101 Jams.
You're listening to In My Humble Opinion with Maxilia Robinson and Charles Lewis. Only on 101.3 Jams.
And welcome back. In my humble opinion, IMHO 101 Jams. Yours truly, Sir Charles.
That's right, and Max.
And this is your number one for classics in today's hip hop and R&B.
Home of the Cheryl Underwood Radio and the Rise and Grind Morning Show.
And gotta shout out Clee with that Soul Lounge that so lovely segues into our show. And y'all make sure y'all stay tuned for that old school, taking y'all to Sunday school, DJ Almighty. But to close out this hour with us is none other than Peggy Scott. She's an RN, accrual and outreach specialist with the Cancer Clinical Research Office at UVA. And she just let us know about she gave us a little education on clinical trials to help debunk some myths. If you have further questions, you definitely can reach her and her team at uvahealth.com/clinical-trials. And we wanted to, while we have her expertise, wanted her to join us on our discussion, Max, when it comes to this healthcare debate that's going on right now. Because Max, you and I have families. We have little children, and you got to make the best choices for them. Whether you want to pay penalties for being uninsured, or whether you want to pay for your insurance, whether you want to get a job just for the insurance. I know people like that. So across the board, whether we're talking about the Affordable Care Act that's known as Obamacare, whether we're talking about the repeals that the Trump administration wants to do, it affects us. It affects all of us. Like I said, regardless of your status in society, if you need any medical care, it affects you. And so before Ms. Scott chimes in with what she knows about the pros and cons of possibly repealing the Affordable Care Act, and of course, from her expertise of how that may affect her clinical research and the Cancer Center here in Charlottesville, I just wanted to touch on a couple of things as far as in comparisons, right? So the Trump administration wants to repeal where Obamacare had all Americans were required to have health insurance or they pay that tax penalty, right? So the Republican plan is to that the mandate and penalty are repealed, right? So as far as employers, companies with more than 50 employees under Obamacare are required to offer health insurance or they pay the penalty. The Republican plan, the mandate and penalty are repealed, so it means that gets rid of. All right, so instead of repeal, we have a change, whereas Obamacare raised the Medicare taxes on the wealthy and imposed new taxes on medical devices, health insurers, drug companies, investment income, tanning salons, high-end health insurance plans, and what have you, all to help offset those costs for people who can't afford, the health plans that they may need, right? So some say that that's sort of soaking the rich, but some say, hey, that's a part of being a Commonwealth, right? Looking out for each other. So the Republican plan maintains roughly 90% of Obamacare taxes, including the tax on high-income earners, but ends the 2.3 sales tax on medical devices, right? So and we could go on and on. There's so many things being repealed, some things are being kept, some things are being changed. One is being changed that insurance are allowed for children under 26 to be covered by their parents' policy. That's important for us in this room. So, but Ms. Scott,
Yes.
with just those mentions, chime in for us as far as what you know and some of the effects that you see happening at our health system here locally based on if it gets repealed, changed, what have you.
So, as a university, you are aware that the University of Virginia serve a very high population of individuals that are at the poverty level. So this new Healthcare Act could potentially be devastating to those individuals. I am by no means an expert in this arena, but what I do know is that this healthcare bill, from everything I'm understanding, is 22 million by 2026 will go uninsured. Well, Medicaid being affected will definitely impact the university. It will impact clinical research. It will impact the standard care. But the concern is that those individuals that are already devastated by so many other factors in their socioeconomic lives, and then not to have medical care or health care, of course, you see these articles that are highly inflammatory about dying in the streets, but your concern is that it truly will have an impact on the type of care people will be able to receive. So I think that the debate itself, I don't have, as I say, any type of expertise on it other than to let you know that many of the clinical trials we do are standard of care versus the new therapy. Okay. So if standard of care is not paid for by the insurance companies, and the patients will have to incur that cost. Okay. And that could become quite an issue.
Mm-hmm. Gotcha. And Ms. Scott, we're going to take a quick break for the top of the hour, and then we'll be right back to close up this discussion. All right?
Thank you.
IMHO.
Live from the Mountain Dew Studios in Charlottesville, it's 1013 Jams.
Hey, you're looking pretty in shape. Been working out?
Yeah, I found a new place.
On your schedule?
Absolutely. It's Anytime Fitness on 29 North, and they have plenty of cardio, resistance machines, and weights, plus personal training. And they're open 24/7, so I can work out even late at night or on holidays.
Well, I keep more normal hours.
If you do, you can take advantage of Anytime's group exercises during staffed hours.
Where did you say Anytime Fitness is?
It's on 29 North, right in front of AMF Keglers, and across the highway from Gander Mountain. That's Anytime Fitness, AnytimeFitnessCville.com.
IMHO 101 Jams, and we're here talking healthcare and the possible reform or repeals with yours truly, Max Razor and Miss Peggy Scott. And so, Max, wants you to chime in as well. Like, one of the things that I wanted to mention is one of the changes is in regards to women's health care. So definitely wanted both of you to chime in on that. Whereas with the Affordable Care Act, insurance companies were prohibited from charging women more than men for the same health plan and must provide core services, including maternity care and contraceptives. Under the Republican plan, insurance companies prohibited from charging women more for health insurance, but states could apply for waivers that allow them to drop coverage for maternity care and contraceptives. The bill also bans women from using government money to buy plans that covers abortion and ends non-abortion Medicaid reimbursement to Planned Parenthood, a nonprofit group, of course, that a lot of people know about. So, when it comes to women's health care, is that something that you all want the government to be so heavily involved in? Should it be covered? Whatever you need, whatever your female needs are, should that just be covered? Should your personal belief should not be involved? What are you all's thoughts?
I think to an extent the government has to be involved, and I'm just hoping that, and from what I hear, I believe it was Mr. McCain whose vote would determine whether or not, but would be one of the deciding votes as far as the replacement of Obamacare. And I'm hoping that it falls flat because there are so many issues, as Ms. Scott mentioned. There are so many healthcare issues that already plague especially African Americans, okay? Because when we work, we can at least get Medicaid. All right, and so if something happens to jeopardize that, then we're left with going with untreated illnesses and routine care, and which affects us in every aspect of our life. And so, my thoughts is that the repeal and replace doesn't happen. And so, and I think to an extent, the government has to be involved.
I have a question for the three of you. Regardless of what your nationality is, how do y'all feel about, when people say foreign people, you like to think of Hispanic people, but I mean, there's more than one group of people in the world. How do you feel about the people that get health assistance but don't have to pay taxes?
I can give my opinion on that. However,
your humble opinion.
However, I have no expertise again on how much it costs to take care of someone who is not a citizen of the United States. So I can't be an expert on it. But I will say that whether we believe this or not, we are our brother's keeper. I truly, strongly believe that. And that's a value that I was brought up with. And I believe that if someone is in need of anything, whether it be health care, whether it be housing, whether it be food, it is something that, as a country, being the wealthiest country in the nation, and a country that has so much waste, how can I watch someone who is sick, whether they be Latino, whether they be Asian, whether they be what have you, go without the necessities of life to be able to sustain life?
Yeah, I definitely can see that point of view, and I know that's why one of the things under the Obama plan was he was talking about it was focused more on those who literally can't afford it. They just can't afford the health insurance.
Absolutely.
Where and I totally get where Razor is coming from.
I do too.
Where like there are some who sort of don't pay taxes and may ride the system in different ways. But I will say, like, that's not just immigrants. Like, that's people who were born in this country that that ride the system as well. But again, like
it
Ms.
makes
Scott,
a lot of sense, as he said.
right, and as you just said, Ms. Scott, it's still about that common good,
The humanity.
and it's about the humanity as far as covering each other's needs. And so the needs part, I don't have a problem with. Now, like should I be paying for somebody else's like high end plan? No. Or should I be paying for like the best, like a pharmaceuticals possible? No, shouldn't. But if somebody comes into an ER with a need,
Absolutely.
I feel like that if I'm chipping in a little bit more, that should be able to go to someone who can't afford it.
And
Go ahead.
I'm sorry. I just wanted to say I'd like to add on to the answer I gave earlier, because I'm familiar with a lot of people and worked in certain environments where the health benefits come by way of Medicaid, which still don't cover a lot of things that individuals need. If a mom needs dental care,
Absolutely.
okay, she Medicaid for adults, it doesn't exist. Or if the child needs a certain testing, then we have all of these different people that offer health care that don't accept Medicaid for the particular test that they need.
Yes.
I know ADHD is one particular one. That it's hard to find someone that will treat kids who have that type of, or test kids rather, that have that type of illness. And so I'd like to see more services added to that personally.
Yeah, and and people who want to know, I'm referencing the BBC.com. They have a comparison of Obamacare Republican plan. But one of the consistent threads I see is that with the Republican plans, it's not as much substance, I must say. It's more about waivers where they kind of the federal government is just giving the rights to the states. And I think, like, you don't have to be a historian to know that means that's a political chess move.
Absolutely.
To where you say, okay,
Absolutely.
as long as we control these state governments, they're going to do what we want them to do anyway, so we don't have to pay for anything.
And we've observed states where people didn't have human rights, and that was given to the states. So the concern is, if you give them the control over someone's receiving care or not, there are people still of color that aren't receiving the basic human rights in certain states. So why do we think that these governors will be more forthcoming when it comes to someone's health care if it costs more money than they want to pay?
If we're speaking for the people that have no voice, there are a lot of black and brown people that get incarcerated.
Absolutely.
So when they come home and they can't get a job, they can't get health insurance.
Yes.
Where is everybody fighting for them?
Yes, and there are small organizations out there doing that as well, but we need more people, you're right, involved in that kind of support.
People can even look up the DOC. That's Department of Corrections. Like, that's a whole nother show because there's like so many atrocities happening right now, like within our correctional facilities where they're getting sued because they're not treating people like human beings. Okay, you made a mistake, but if you're there to be rehabilitated, then you need to help with the rehabilitation, which includes their health.
I agree with that.
I can think of another. The list goes on and on, but I can think of another faulty part of the system. I have a kid that's in college now, right? So I'm part of these conversations where the kid had Medicaid when they graduated from high school, went off to college, but now they're too old to have Medicaid anymore. They're a college student, have Medicaid, so clearly the parents can't afford health care. Now where does the kid turn?
Yeah.
That's a great, see, those are the kind of things that a lot of people don't want to be in politics and don't want to be in advocacy, but it is so vitally important. Again, I say that African Americans and other individuals of other nationalities and ethnicities, we have to have our voice heard on a daily basis. When things like that come up, you hear about it from this show, but you don't always hear about that in the standard conversation around the coffee table or wherever. So things like that have to be brought to the forefront.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
Yeah. And and my last comment was doctors and teachers kind of remind me of each other, even though they're different ends of the pay scales. And of course, that's an argument to say why if someone has a professional degree, why is there such a pay disparity? But I think about people who have that passion. You grow up thinking, I want to help kids. I want to teach kids. Same thing with doctors. A lot of kids say, I want to heal people. I want to help people. And so it's unfortunate that we look at these professions sometimes and the people aren't in it for helping people anymore. And I think that's a huge problem with it is they're prescribing things. They're They're giving advice that's going to either keep you coming back to pay them, or it's going to give them a return on the medicine that you buy. And I think we're in a sad state when we don't have enough doctors, like a lot of the great ones out there who are there for the patient, their best interest.
Absolutely. And that's why it's so vitally important that we, each of us, have a relationship with their providers, that trust is built and maintained. Not just go by and see a curbside doctor and walk away, but build a relationship with those providers.
Ms. Scott, don't you agree that when it comes to the money aspect, the money is in the treatment and not the cure?
The money is definitely, it's very costly to be treated, so we have to agree on that. I have to honestly say that those individuals that I've worked with in the past 20 plus years, I see their passion. I see the long hours they put in. I see the time they spend with their patients. So I have to say that there are going to be those that are out there over the top, but for the majority of the people that are doing the work in the trenches, they are there for the patient.
Well, thank you, Ms. Scott. That's Ms. Peggy Scott once again, ladies and gentlemen. She was here, and she is the accrual and outreach specialist with the Cancer Clinical Research Office at UVA. Ms. Peggy Scott, keep doing the great work that you're doing. And y'all remember, she wanted anyone who wanted more info or to take part in clinical trials to make sure you visit them at uvahealth.com/clinical-trials. Ms. Scott, thank you again for joining In My Humble Opinion. Until next time.
Thank you all very much.
Thank you.
You're listening to In My Humble Opinion with Maxilia Robinson and Charles Lewis, only on 101.3 Jams.